Hey, what is up YouTube? I'm Aeroplane and this is my take on the Frostblink of Wintry Blast Mines Trickster. And pretty much I'll be talking about how I felt after doing essentially 2 runs, one in SSF all the way to 2 stones, and then one more run I did in the GSF scenario for about a week. And yeah, pretty much was able to take down Ubers on day 2 and reached a POB of about 100 million DPS. So you may have seen Jungrun's video, and this is pretty much my approach and pretty much some feedback to his video. And as he mentioned, I was pretty set on playing Xang and Reap as my starter and didn't want to pivot at league start. So didn't want to leave you guys hanging, and as I promised to try it out, this is going to be that video talking about it. If you haven't already, do check out Jungrun's video on Frostblink and Wintry Mines, which I'll link down in the description, which he posted before the 3.26 league start. In this video, I'll be talking about, I'll be showing a couple of endgame showcases, some of the kinks that I found with the build that made it a little bit more challenging to play, and lastly, I'll be talking about how I solved various nuances to a mana-based mine build. So next up, I'm going to be showing a showcase of a Frostblink of Wintry Mines. Goats. What is that? Exalted Orb. Scarab. Horn misses. Greater Eldritch Ikers. Whoa, that's a huge AoE with haste. Is it like frenzies? Very frenzies. Freaking AoE, he's so fast. What is happening, sir? He's dead. Unique boss, 52% increase attack class speed. Nice. Is that frenzy? I feel like he had frenzy. Oh, no frenzy. Mark for death as well. Cosmic decay. Let's get a balls. I think there was a ball. Yeah, there was a ball. I'm your true memory. It's gonna do the stupid face, right? Of course. I think the problem for this one. Burjoni. So you might be wondering, what is the difference between the different mine builds? And I pretty much plotted out a kind of a chart, if you will, of how the different builds performed. But the one in blue is going to be Frostblink Mines, and you will want to compare it to the other mine build that I created this league, and that's going to be the Exsanguinate Reap Mines. So just for comparison, I'll be comparing it with Reap in terms of the power level when it comes to damage of the build. And so overall, you can see that Frostblink Mines does take the cake. It is a skill that scales very well with gem levels, and there's very easy access to gem levels through the Cutthroat Garb, the chest, which allows you to get a +5 on it, and if you get additional +2 corruption, you will be able to get +7 on the bronze lith, for you to be able to scale damage very easily early on to be able to get that damage and do the pinnacle content that you're looking to do. As compared to Reap, you can see that it's going to be pretty much lower because of the access to damage is going to be much less than if you were to play Frostblink Mines. But all the different scalars are going to be the same. The way you access through cluster jewels, your passives on the tree, the gear that you're going to get, it's all going to be the same outside of the +7 chest. But then comes the point where it just exceeds significantly the damage that Frostblink Mines can output, and that is going to be because of the Doriani Mercenary that this league you will have access to. So all lightning builds will have significantly more damage than other builds. But until you reach that point, Frostblink Mines is very good at progressing early, having that damage, and on the first few days of the league before you get your Doriani Mercenary on a lightning-based build setup. So that is pretty much my view of the power level with respect to the investment that you should be able to get on a softcore trade related scenario. And next, I wanted to talk about the difference between damage and clear, which is going to be very important when it comes to discussing endgame builds, because generally these two metrics determine the amount of currency per hour that you can make. So starting off with our beloved 3.25 Hex Blast build, it is sitting at a very nice middle ground between damage and clear. It had very good area of effect. You could even scale it further on your using a passive tree, but generally, even without scaling the AoE, I felt that the clear was very good. And on top of that, the damage you could scale to very good levels. Just keep in mind that this chart has been souped up because of the Doriani Mercenary, and this would have been pretty much the top end of the damage cap if Doriani didn't exist this league. So just keep that in mind, that this is a bit skewed because of that. And then comes the Call Exsanguinate. It is a build that I league started with. It has a really good clear, but the damage is, of course, you can see one of the lowest, if not the lowest, out of all of these builds that I'm comparing to. And the Cold Reap has a lot more damage as compared to the Cold Exsanguinate. I would say it's just very slightly higher than Hex Blast just because of the access to the use of Vile Reap. But of course the clear tanks a lot just because of the nature of the skill. It just hits in a small AoE, smaller than Hex Blast. And when you compare that to the Cold Frostblink over here, you can see that I believe the Cold Frostblink has a slightly worse clear even than the Reap build, just because you need to throw the mines on top of the enemy for it to hit, as compared to Reap being able to jump across. You have a huge range around the enemy, which you can throw the mines for it to hit the enemy. And of course, last but not least, you can see how much more damage and a little bit more clear, I would say. When you get more damage, your clear becomes a little bit better because there's less stragglers as well for you to detonate and hit at additional time. So I would say that once you transition to Lightning Exsanguinate, it is insane at clearing, especially with the Mercenary gloves in this league. +2 chain makes it an insane clear skill. You're able to chain 3 additional times. You shoot out 10 tendrils. You pretty much hit in one minefield throw. You hit 150 monsters or multiple monsters 150 times in total, just with one throw of your mines, and makes it an insane clear skill. And on top of that, Lightning Reap pretty much taking the cake when it comes to single target damage after you transition to a lightning based build. So that's pretty much my summary of the comparison between different mine builds available today. All right, so here is some of the kinks that I found with the build. So what I've noticed was, firstly, you need to be in a certain distance from the enemy as one of the issues that I've seen. I don't think this is actually a set limit, but it's more of a limit because of the third point over here, because you need to be in a certain distance from the enemy to throw the mines. And because of this set mine throwing distance that you see over here, the mines need to be placed very near the enemy for it to jump and hit the enemy over here in red. And because of this actually creates a weird scenario where you have to aim at a particular monster, which is different from the other other mine builds out there. When you think back about the 3.25 Hex Blast that you'll be familiar with, that is where you will be able to throw in a wide radius around the enemy that you see over here. So if you throw your mines anywhere around the enemy in red, it will be able to target within the spell distance. But for Frostblink Mines, it's going to be very different, where you need to throw the mines very close to the enemy for it to be able to hop across, because it's a movement skill. It needs to be very near the enemy. And for those of you who have played with Frostblink and Wintry mines in your Ice Nova Frostbolts days, that is where you'll be very familiar that the Frostblink and Wintry Blast mines, it does a very short hop to be able to do damage to the enemy. And because of that, you have to throw the mines very close to the enemy for it to hop across. And because of this, it creates a weird situation where you need to be in a certain distance from the enemy, as opposed to the other Mind Blaze builds that you may be familiar. If you played Exsanguinate, you played Reap, you played Hex Blast in 3.25, you can throw pretty much anywhere in the radius of the enemy, and all your mines will target. And this creates a weird scenario where your POB DPS may not be as good as it seems if you're fighting bosses that move a lot or teleport around very often. You end up having a lot of mines just sitting around not doing as much as compared to other mine-based builds. Next is going to be, it doesn't detonate at additional time sometimes. So because of the way that the mines hop, and when the bosses teleport, it creates a situation where the mines that end up at a particular location is not able to jump again or be able to detonate again. And this creates a situation where you'll see that you always have like a high amount of mine count towards the top, and that is where actually in this build scaling mine detonation speed is more important than other builds. But there is of course a limit to how much you can scale that detonation speed through through automation levels, through quality of detonate mine, and the various nodes on the tree. And because of this creates a weird situation where the build is slightly more challenging to play. Last but not least, so for the line of sight from the enemy, that is where you will need to throw your mines in a way where it's able to hit an enemy through a corridor. I've not been able to successfully replicate this in a 100% scenario, but essentially what this means is if you're around a corridor and you're throwing your mines, it struggles sometimes to be able to hit an enemy just because of the way it needs to trigger. Sometimes the skitterbot does a great job at helping you detonate those mines, but if the mines have to detonate by themselves, that's where it will struggle a little bit sometimes to hop across to the enemy that you see over here, for example. I think the skitterbots are on them and not on the mines, so they are not triggering as expected that you see over here. But yeah, otherwise, if the skitterbots can detonate, I believe that to some degree that some line of sight is going to be needed, but generally this is something that I'm not able to fully replicate. And you know, one of the issues of the build is sometimes you can see the mine over here, the monster over there, it's not detonating because the skitterbot's not near enough, or the mine is just expiring. This is just something to keep in mind. So all in all, this makes it slightly more challenging to play, I would say, when it comes to playing Frostblink mines, just because of the various things that I mentioned, needing to throw the mines very near the enemy as opposed to other kinds of mines, and it's just a different play style, and you could say that maybe it's a little bit of a skill issue. For those of you who have not played a mine-based build before, like last league when I started playing Hex Blast, something I noticed was that a lot of the high-end builds had, you know, insane power charge stacking gear, but ZHP, not able to map in T17s, for example, or builds that would map early on but then make use of enduring mana flask, as most of the guides out there would have recommended. And I thought to myself, that is not a kind of build that I want to utilize. If I need to fight a boss, generally Hex Blast had a lot of damage, you should be able to kill the boss within, but the caveat here is should, right? But then the enduring mana flask, you will be able to hit it at a maximum of 5 times, which is about, you have about 35 seconds window of infinite mana, and then after that you'll be doing something like 20% of your damage once you run out of mana flask. And I didn't want to be in that situation, and that is where I thought to myself, is it easy? Why are people using mana flask, and is it easy to solve that mana? So I think long story short is that it is not particularly easy to solve for mana, I would say, or not as straightforward as you would think. But then again, if you know how to manage your mana, that is where you can drop your mana flask through various methods that I'm just about to talk about. And talking about the late game, that's where you want to use a Mage Blood. You'll be using 4 utility flasks to make full use of a Mage Blood, and leaves you with 1 flask slot. When playing an Exang Reap build, that's where you're life-based mines, that's where I would want to use a life flask in that scenario. Also, if you're playing a mana-based build, you should also want a life flask in that scenario, because once you lose health, you can recover it back. Or in certain situations where you're fighting pinnacle bosses, you want a DPS flask like a Bottle of Faith in there, or if you're mapping, you want a wine flask, for example, in that situation. And I would think that in majority of situations, an eternal mana flask, an enduring eternal mana flask, would not be one of the premier choices of flasks just to solve your mana problems for a mine-based build. And because of this, I've went about on a journey to solve mana, and I believe I've reached a holy grail, although this may take a few steps and a bit of learning on your end that I'm going to share with you right now. So solving mana comes in 2 ways. Firstly is that you would notice that you would be reserving mana as you throw mines that you see over here, right? You can see that I'm reserving mana, and once that those mines detonate, you can see that it unreserves that mana. Secondly is that every mine will have cost as well as a reservation. On top of the reservation, you can see here 32 mana reservation, and the cost is going to be 27 mana, and in this case 8 life. So there's going to be these two costs, which I'll talk about, reservation as well as spend, and that's going to be a lingo that I'm going to be using when I talk about this. So tackling reservation, first and foremost, there aren't many ways to tackle mana reservation of mines, but the one that you would be taking on all mana based mine builds is going to be the efficient explosive wheel, where you can reduce, where you can have the increased mana reservation efficiency of mine throwing. So you definitely take all of these, and efficient explosives is very good as well, with a 15% more multiply to your damage by being able to detonate a mine at additional time. So this is a must take on all mine based builds to be able to reduce the reservation of your mines. And additionally, on top of that, what you may not notice is that it also takes into account the reservation of your skills. So this will eat into your mana pool, which reduces the amount of mana you can reserve. So that's when talking about reservation, you also need to get reservation efficiency to reduce the amount of mana that your auras reserve. So in this case, I'm using Clarity, I'm using Skitterbots, and then if you're using Grace early on in the league, that's where you will also be taking things like a Grace, a 2p reservation efficiency cluster to be able to have better mana reservation efficiency for a particular 50% aura. In this case, what I typically like to do is Sublime Form. I'm not sure where the cluster is right now, but something like this is what I would use early on in the league. Usually on day 1, I get my hands on this just above eye level 50 clusters, should be able to do great work in terms of reservation, and very good to reduce reservation efficiency for your 50% auras. And that is pretty much reservation, on the topic of reservation. Next is how we deal with spend, and this is going to come in various ways. And one that you see that's going to be happening a lot more is going to be not having enough mana, and that is where people use Enduring Mana Flask. So something I didn't mention about reservation, just to touch on that topic, is that if you do not have enough reservation to be able to have positive mana in your build, so for example, if I were to take out this reservation wheel, you would see that I hit maximum mana. I'm not able to throw any more mines, even though I'm right clicking. You can see that everything is grayed out. I'm not able to use any of my skills at all, and very, very lethal in hardcore. Even if I'm throwing my mines, nothing is happening. I can't shield charge, I can't Frostblink, and this is the situation where you do not want that to occur at all. And because of this, having ample reservation efficiency and making sure that your maximum mine limit, you still have enough mana, is going to be very important for the build. And just to illustrate this in Path of Building, that is where I'm going to be showing how you can see whether your build has enough mana. First thing you want to understand is what is the maximum number of mines that you can throw in your build. You can see currently my maximum is going to be 21 mines. And how do I know that? So the baseline number of mines that you can throw out without any passive points on the tree and just using Minefield is going to be 18 mines. If you take Saboteur, you have 2 additional mines. If you take Volatile Mines, you have 3 additional mines. In this case, I have intentionally not taken Saboteur, so that I have a total of 18 plus 3 from Volatile Mines, a maximum of 21 mines. So you want to make sure that in your POB, that once you put your maximum number of active mines, that the unreserved mana is still positive, such that you can not only use your movement skills, but also keep throwing and replacing your mines. And why is this important? Because if Rog is the enemy and I'm throwing the mines on him and he moves away, if I do not have enough mana, I'm not able to throw, let's say Rock move over to the Heist Locker, I'm not able to throw additional mines over to the Heist Locker. So now you can see over here, and if he teleports there, I can continue throwing and pretty much throw new mines. But if I do not have the reservation efficiency required, that is where if he moves over, I'm not able to replace the mines pretty much. Replace the mines. So if I take this out, you can see that once I have no more mana, I'm not able to replace the mines on the Rock's new placement. So that is why having enough reservation on your build to have a surplus mana is going to be very important. And the next aspect is to be able to solve for spend. And that is getting simply this amount over here, the mana reservation, the mana regen to be equal or slightly lower than the mana cost per second. And why is it that you do not need to be equal or more? It's because generally in fights, that's where you're shield charging, you're going to be flame dashing. You're not going to be just standing there and ramping your mines. So generally just slightly lower is going to be fine. But the rule of thumb is that you want the mana regen to be as close as possible to your mana cost per second that takes into account your mine throw speed. I'm a big fan of mine throw speed, and having faster mine throw speed means a lot more flexible fights. Think of it as the attack speed of attack builds or the cast speed of cast-based builds. Mine throw speed is going to be your freedom of movement when it comes to being able to map quickly, to be able to pivot your movement between the mine throws a lot better. But it comes with one downside, that it increases your spend. So do keep that in mind, that it is slightly of a double-edged sword when it comes to mana-based mine builds. But that being said, the first way that we can do it is going to be through the life mastery that I mentioned earlier, where you can convert some of the skill costs into life. You can see that without this mastery, I have 115 spend, and I would not have enough mana regen to handle most of it, but generally this is going to be still an okay amount. But a quick fix will be to take this life mastery to manage the life cost per second, a very small amount over here. And this also reduces the mana cost of your other skills. And for mine builds, you have a very easy mitigation layer, and that's to be able to take the 2.5% regen life per second if you detonate a mine recently. And you can see just with that, you should be able to have a decent amount of recovery to be able to mitigate that life regeneration. The second method that you can use is to be able to just get an affix on gear that has mana regeneration. You can see currently I have a Hate Grasp 2-stone ring with a tier 1 mana regeneration roll. This is really good for the build if you have flat mana, life, mana regeneration, all of which are really good for the build. Flat mana gives you more mana. That brings me to the next topic, to be able to reserve mana, because Reservation of Mines is a flat amount. And because of this, having more flat mana allows you to reserve more mines and give you more surplus for your reservation. On top of that, if you guys aren't already aware, mana regeneration is based off your maximum mana per second. And by baseline, it's 1.8, and this scales with mana regeneration. So the more maximum mana you have means you regenerate more mana on top of your baseline mana that you're recovering from. So it is really good to be able to have it on a ring, for example, and then you can further catalyze that ring. I'm currently in a GSF, so I don't really have that luxury of throwing 10 to 15 fertile catalyst over here. At least I didn't go ahead to farm that, so that is going to be really good. And of course, on my other pieces of gear, that's where I'm opting for increased mana as one of the ideal prefixes. On top of your life, you get mana, and of course some defenses for evasion. That will be the ideal prefixes. And on the other pieces of gear where you can feed in maximum mana, that is where I've gone ahead to do so. Here's an example of a belt where I've gotten mana on it as well. Onto my jewels, that is where I also opt for percent maximum mana if you have spare prefixes. If you don't have enough reservation or enough mana regen, those are some options that you can opt for. You can see in this Cobalt jewel, I have life max mana, and these are some of the ideal mods that you're going to be looking for. So as a rule of thumb, previously for Hex Blast builds, I had like 1.4k mana. You can currently see that I have there about 1.4k mana. But if you are reserving an additional 50% aura, currently I'm completely relying on my Mercenary to give me that grace mitigation over here. So I've dropped the 50% aura. And because of this, 1.4k mana is enough for my current iteration of the build. But I think in my previous iteration on my day 4 POB, you can see that I have a lot more mana, 1.6k, and at one point like up to 1.9k mana. To be able to have enough mana recovery for the spend of the build. The reason why Frostblink Mines requires a lot more mana for the build is because the gem levels increases mana cost. And for our build, that is where we have a +7 chest, significantly increasing the mana cost of the build, and therefore you do need slightly more than the kind of target benchmark of 1.4k mana. So 1.6k mana if you have 50% aura reserved to be able to manage that mana cost for the build. Some other options that I've done to be able to reduce the spend is going to be the use of inspiration support. So this is pretty much a pretty good DPS link, something that builds commonly used to be able to reduce spend. If you're familiar with Ice Nova or Frostbolts, this is going to be a common link. May not be the best DPS for the build, but something that reduces the cost to be able to sustain your damage. And Inspiration serves that purpose to be able to reduce, you can see the mana cost from 109 all the way down to 80 for the build. And that is one. Next thing I did was to opt into Clarity. If you have spare Reservation, it's going to be a bit of tinkering around because Clarity takes away the Reservation but improves your mana regeneration. So it's a double-edged sword over here, something that you can leverage as you balance your Reservation and spend. That Clarity is something that you can increase a little bit more, decrease a little bit more based on your maximum number of mines, and make sure that you're not over the limit of the spend. So you can make sure that this number is not red. So if you manage that properly, Clarity is a good option for you to be able to add some flat mana regen to the build, which scales with your percent increase mana regeneration rate. And the last solution that I want to talk about is going to be EBMOM. So this is one that Jungron, if you watch this video, this is the one he suggested early on. I believe that is a good option. If you put in EB, MOM, and then if you go Ghost Routes, I think you do have some decent level of sustain, but it's very hard. What I found when you're taking a lot of dot damage from poisons, ignites, dot grounds, you end up with a situation where you're just completely out of mana, completely out of ES, and you just die. You can't use any movement skills, and something that I personally do not enjoy. Maybe it's skill issue, but something that makes it feel uncomfortable to play. Some options, if you do choose to go into EBMOM and find it okay, is going to be Spellbreaker to be able to trigger ES recharge earlier, as well as Instinct for ES energy to regain energy shield when you suppress damage. It is a good option to be able to manage mana recovery and completely ignore mana recovery, mana regen for the build, because you'll be spending ES, and also the MOM portion of it will add EHP to your build, increasing the total amount of EHP that is spread across. So that is, I would say, a good option, but something that has made me feel uncomfortable to play with, and not something I've done for my iteration of the build. Something I wanted to talk about is going to be some of the discomfort when it comes to playing mine-based builds. And from there comes with this clip that I saw is one of the 2 videos pretty much available, apart from Jung Ruins, talking about Frostblink and Wintry Blast mines. But something that I've seen over here is one of the struggles that the build faces, and that is having to throw the mines near the enemy, and struggles. And this is one that I watched the video and I was like, this is actually quite funny. He was doing a Guardian map, sat here for like 3-4 seconds, can't even kill the proximity shield monsters because the mines are jumping out of the proxy shields because it maybe has too much AoE or too little AoE, and it just couldn't kill the monsters just sitting there for 3 seconds. So I thought it was a funny clip to share that kind of demonstrates some of the weird moments where Frostblink and Wintry mines actually struggles to deal with. You can see over here, it's just sitting there and throwing some mines, so something that is very weird to see. So I'll link this video in the description by Skybreaker POB down below. And lastly, it is not a 3.26 build if we don't talk about Mercenaries. So the 3 Mercenaries that I have thought about. First one I did not have at all, but it is something that you can use early on, and that's going to be any ambusher with Skirterbots. So early on, if you get an Archon's Belt from the first boss from the Loneliness encounter, it has a chance to drop an Archon belt. I don't know how many percent, maybe 30 to 40% chance to drop a belt. So this is a quick win to be able to get, I think, 20% chill, 30% shock, and I think up to 17% Scourge if you have a 70% increased ailments. So a very good belt to just shore up that damage early on. And then you can use, not the Greatest Signet, but you can use the Heartbreaker Cowl Dagger, you can use Leercast, or Shaper's Seed with Purgle's Toll to be able to scale that damage. I didn't have this early on, and because early on I got a Fallen Reverend with this setup, a Zealotry and Battle Mage's Cry Mercenary. So you can see over here, I have Zealotry and Battle Mage's Cry Mercenary. This is the amulet and belt that I was using. So over here you can see I used a Singularity. Early on, a good option is going to be dual wielding a Singularity as well as a Sign of a Sin Eater. Sign of the Sin Eater is very good at giving you ailment immunity aside from ground effects, because the wording on that weapon just says ailments are applied to your mercenary instead of you. So that's great. Second is going to be Singularity, giving you hinder on nearby monsters, so that's nice. For my helmet, I've done reduced regen helmet. For the chest, I've scaled Zealotry. For the gloves, I put Unnerve. For the boots, I put Ancestral Bond because I didn't want him to die to Reflect, because that's happening quite a bit. For my shield, Replica Victorious Charity gives you 3 endurance charges. Really, really good for the build. Poco's Toe needs no explanation. I anointed Dazzling Strikes because it's cheaper to give you blind on enemies, so you get 20% more evade, pretty much. And then the rings is just life and resist, and then the belt is 25 Fizz as Fire with the Calm's Binding. And for the auras, what I'm looking for is just Zealotry and Battle Mage's Cry, a significant boost to your critical strikes before you put on Gale Sight for the build. So for our build, we did a cheap option of putting on Gale Sight to be able to scale crit, but some other options that you can look for is if you have access to a good crit wand plus Sandstorm Visage, that is where you can use that to cap your crit and not needing to use Gale Sight, which means that you can freeze monsters, which is pretty good. But currently in the GSF, we didn't have access to that, so I stuck with Gale Sight for the brittle for the crit chance. But apart from that, Zealotry and Battle Mage's Cry is very good early on to be able to shore up that critical strike chance on monsters. And the last merc that I want to talk about is going to be the Blade Caster merc. So the perfect Blade Caster merc is one with Grace and Aspect of the Spider. I've opted for Blade Vortex or Blade Fall of Trathis. You can have either, and that's good enough. Where you can have Instant Cull using the Heartbreaker, Leer Cast for 50% ink, the same perk wheels, same belt, and then we have the shield with 20% increase non-cursed auras. We can't use the Replica Victorious because it's a strength-based shield. And then rings are going to be life and resist. Chest is going to be scaling the Grace effect for increased evasion. Shrimp Sorrows because I didn't want him to die to Reflect, but you can use the Unnerved Glove for that damage, and then your Exarch Implicit doesn't need Unnerved. You can put Mind Throw Speed, so you can have more total damage for your build. Lastly is the boots with life and resist, but realistically you can put in a sap if it does proc, you have increased damage for your taming. And generally for the build we have chill, shock, occasional ignites if you're able to get fires to spells on your hypnotic eye, you get that ailment as well. And then if you have the set boots, and then I have Scorch on my current set of boots because I'm using Ancestral Vision, but personally I would prefer to gear with Storm Shroud so I don't need to go Spellbreaker on my build. And that's pretty much the summary of the mercenaries that I've used and how I get my character. I will put all my POBs that you see over here. I have multiple days of POBs as I progress through the GSF. I'll put that into the description down below. And yeah, pretty much that is how I've geared. Personally, as I mentioned earlier, I would prefer to gear with Storm Shroud instead of Ancestral Vision, but for the GSF, I did have that option, and I will approach it the same way in terms of gearing Ailment Immunity as my Exang and Reap, which you can check in my previous videos. So with that, thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys have a great league. And if you haven't already, it would mean a lot if you like, share, and subscribe. And I'll be streaming live on Twitch for the next few days, and as well as next week I'll be playing BPL, so I'll be streaming for pretty much 3 days straight there, competing in the group scavenger hunt race, pretty much. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. Alright, here goes. The worst thing about this is the storm that comes in. Freaking approaches me. Beam? Okay, faced. No, don't die, civilians. Don't walk in. Don't shoot. Okay, good. No, I. Holy massive thread. Wait, where is it? Oh my goodness. Oh no way. He's phased. But he still beamed me. Oh, if I knew I was gonna beam, I would stay around near him, right? Like, the worst thing I want to do when he's beaming is go far away from him. Because the beam will hit you a lot easier. Oh, I freaking flashed through that one. I saw his hands as I was Frostblinking away. Ooh. I'm dead. I propped my Quicksilver for that one. Usually I save my Quicksilver for the last phase. This is one of the fights where you actually need movement speed for a specific moment in the fight. It's freaking crazy. This last phase, I am alive. Pretty clean so far. I'm gonna jinx myself. Bottom right. I preloaded so well. It's all calculated. How does he like debuff my Assassin's Mark? Ooh. Ouch. Ouch. What do you got? Another jewel. Okay, okay. That's pretty damn clean. Actually, I think we're okay. I should have brought Frost Shield in or something. Oh, that was good damage. Wait, a mark? I swear, there was like a minimum distance there. You saw how I threw my mines, then I walked closer and then it popped? There was some minimum distance there. Woke and power, let's go dude. Wait, can you use woke and power? I assume you can. Like who can't? That's a better question. Mark you? Oh shit, bad touch. That was a degen ground more than anything else. Okay, here we go. Okay, instant phase. There's usually DR, I should hold off on my DD and then press it after 3 seconds probably, like around this debuff one more time. Okay, now. Ouch! Freaking Maligaro! Korearo! Alright, let's face. Oh! Ooh. Ooh. DPS? I should have marked her so I don't need to mark her again. Cause I usually mark brain, and so I need to remark. Oh, this is so hard. Can I remember? You guys remember that one? Holy shit, dude. It's clean so far. It's last phase brain, right? I don't think you can call brain. That's one of the great things. Alright, let's debuff one more time. Now we activate for freaking chevrons. Chevrons, and who's that dog? Is the dog a summon or something? Oh, mark. Oh yeah, I think I marked her. So I can save marking time later. Hell? I say that, but I still mark anyway. Really don't get much flask charges in here. Easy. Freaking Deathless Super Maven, let's go, dude! Oh. I need this Awaken Gem, dude, but I already have it. Freaking Impossible Escape, are you